All right.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here for the ACT-IAC Networks and Telecommunications Community of Interest member session for December as we close out the year. So to kick things off, I'd like to just welcome you all to another ACT-IAC event. And for those of you who are new to ACT-IAC, I hope you will find this session informative and beneficial, and you'll continue to participate. From my very biased perspective, ACT-IAC is, one of the most important public-private partnerships, a nonprofit entity whereby industry and government can engage together to benefit the federal government as they move forward in their missions. Within the networks and telecommunications community of interest, our goal is to provide clear, impartial feedback and recommendations on all things network and telecommunication related, and collaborate with the government project sponsors and advisors. And this morning, we're going to talk a good bit about one of our important projects. So the AT&T COI, as we like to say, is sponsoring two different projects in 2025, and they'll carry forward into 2026. What we're here to talk about this morning is modernizing federal networks from the campus and beyond. And I think we're going to have an exciting discussion today. We've got a panel of industry experts to talk about, how should the federal government think about leveraging advanced technologies such as software-defined WAN, SASE, fixed wireless, LEO, to create a network that's not only robust, but adaptable and prepared for future modernization efforts. So by way of introduction, again, Stephen Matherne, I'm the industry vice chair of the AT&T COI, and I want to quickly offer the panelists to introduce themselves. So we'll kick off with Erik. So Erik, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves quickly.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Erik, Director of Solutions Architecture at AT&T. I lead our sales engineers and solutions architects in support of our federal customers. I've been with AT&T for 18 years, and part of that I served as a Signal Corps officer in the U.S. Army.
All right. If we can head over to Scott.
Yeah, Scott Andersen, solution architect, formerly with Verizon. Happy to be here.
All right, thanks, Scott. Phil?
Yeah, Phil Moser. I'm with Fortinet Federal. I direct the civilian programs. Been there almost 7 years now. Before that, I had a long history from another OEM in the layer one transport market.
Okay, Chris Grindstaff.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Grindstaff. I'm the sales engineering manager at AT&T. I support a team of engineers who supports federal civilian agencies.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, Mohamed.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Mohamed Hersi. I am with ACI Solutions. I'm the Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer. Been at ACI since inception, and happy to be here today with a great bunch of smart people.
Great. Thank you so much, Mohamed. So the format for today's discussion, I will moderate a series of questions that talk a little bit about, what we intend to produce. So at the end of this, my goal and the goal of all the panelists is for those of you who are following along with what the AT&T COI is doing, that this discussion will pique your interest in consuming and leveraging the work products as part of the project. I will remind everybody that ACT-IAC is a volunteer organization. So if the conversation, if some of the projects are of interest to you, I'd ask that you consider volunteering. So the work that ACT-IAC does can't be done without volunteers. So I hope you're excited about the discussion, and I hope I encourage you to volunteer to participate in future projects for the networks and telecommunications community of interest. Okay, so without further ado, the topic is about modernizing federal networks, and maybe I'll let Chris kick things off. But Chris, talk to the team here a little bit about what does network modernization mean to you in the context of federal agencies?
Thanks, Stephen. It means moving towards a more dynamic and flexible network architecture that can more effectively and efficiently meet the changing demands of users on where and how they access applications and data. I'm thinking of things like it's a more mobile workforce today. Gone are the days where all government employees are sitting in government offices accessing government hosted applications and data over a private network like MPLS or even private lines. Those users are accessing those resources via mobile devices from anywhere at any time. And those applications and data may not even be hosted by government agencies themselves. They may be in cloud service providers, such as, one of the prime examples is people access Microsoft Office 365 all the time, right? IoT, Internet of Things, is becoming way more prevalent than in the past. Agencies are collecting data from sensors, whether it be environmental or building management systems or security systems that need to be collected and collated and centralized somewhere. And of course, artificial intelligence, right? We hear a lot about that in the news today, but it's going to start having a much broader impact on enterprises and government agencies as we go forward. And it's going to really change the way traffic patterns are in networks from what we're used to in the past. So I think modernizing a network means moving away from that static, almost hub and spoke type architecture that we're used to with centralized internet access points and pushing that internet access out to the edges of the network directly where the users reside.
Thanks, Chris. Hey, Scott, do you want to add some color to that? So, Chris, you talked about the cloud services, IoT, and of course AI, which we hear a ton about, right? Scott, I don't know if you want to add to that. I know that AI is something you think a lot about for sure.
Well, yeah. So when we start thinking about, right, what does modernization mean, right? The word modernization, it's a word that gets thrown out, right? If you if you are looking at the 1860s in the 1880s, it's a modernized world, comparatively speaking, right? And so when we look at modernization, right, it's a word that means a lot of different things, but mostly what it means is we're new. We're doing things differently. And so to me, modernization is this whole concept of future agile. So Chris talked about security and IoT and AI, right? Those are three big areas of concern for federal agencies, but also for people. Gartner says there's going to be more IoT devices in the world than human beings by a factor of 4, 5, and even 6 in the next 10 years. So you're looking at 40, 50, 60, maybe even 100 billion IoT devices, all of them bouncing around with telemetry, all of them doing things, all of them interacting with the world. So to me, modernization is this whole thing of let's get to future agile. Let's be able to respond to the change in an expedient manner rather than reacting to the change after the bus hits us.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, and I know we're gonna really talk a good bit more about that future agile state as we continue the conversation. But Mo, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about alignment, right? We talk a lot about modernization, and industry has perspectives on modernization. Equipment manufacturers, software manufacturers have their perspective on modernization. But in the day, you've got to align things. So how, can you talk to us a little bit about how federal agencies should think about, aligning their modernization efforts with their agency mission goals and objectives?
Stephen, thank you. I think that's a fantastic question. If you look at the network modernization today, it has to be aligned and backward compatible to the mission outcomes, not forward technology focused or capability focused. Our agency partners today are mission-driven organizations, whether you're looking at the DoD or you're looking at CBP. You're always going to have a focus that's going to be mission-driven focus. So we need to identify the core functionalities of the network that aligns with the mission needs, and again, reduces operational risk and service delays to the end users and the mission requirements. we need to engage, and we're going to talk about this more later on, but we need to engage the program leadership at an early stage to ensure that that alignment exists, and that that IT and telecom doesn't function solely outside of the mission needs. And we need to tie the investments that we're asking agencies to make to align with the priorities of those missions, and make sure those strategic alliances are in place, and that they not only align with what's needed today, but that they align with the with whatever priorities are there for the agency today, and also the administration. And lastly, and Scott kind of touched on this, agility is going to be important. We need to have it be able to create a network that's modern, that's agile, that's able to adapt to the mission needs, whether it's going to be supporting the needs again of the warfighter or a DHS component that needs to have access to data right at the border. So again, it's going to be important that alignment is in place. And then lastly, we want to make sure we're measuring what counts and making sure that we're outcome focused and mission focused.
Awesome. Thanks, Mo. So we've quickly covered a good bit of territory, right? Talking about what does modernization mean? How do you align modernization with federal agency mission priorities and objectives? Hey, Phil, I'd love to hear a little bit from you about, what's driving modernization. So, what are some of the things that are really pushing federal agencies to embark on a modernization journey?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. No, thanks, Scott. Thanks, Stephen. Sorry. I would say, there are probably a handful of interlocking requirements and dependencies that are driving those, some of which have already been talked about here. I think the need to develop and build and modernize a network that can adapt to different mission requirements, as those, I think Chris alluded to the fact that there aren't very many people that are just sitting behind a desk anymore. There's a huge mobility workforce out there. A lot of the missions require mobility, as an example. So the network has to be able to support that. Adaptability. How many missions require access to apps, for example, and cloud access? So in a hybrid environment, a cloud-based environment, you've got to have a network that's very adaptable and can respond to those mission needs. Scalability, the amount of bandwidth. A number of us during our sessions in this group have talked about the bandwidth explosion it's already underway because of AI and some of the other requirements. So you've got to be able to scale that network, and to be able to do so very, very efficiently. Cost is a big driver, especially in this day and age. I think that's going to be a factor in any kind of modernization initiative. And I guess the last thing, other things I'll mention. One is security has got to be embedded into the very heart of a modernized network. I think we're going to talk a little bit later about some of those initiatives and some of those architectures. But it's no longer enough to have a moat around the network and to have a static perimeter-based network or security. So that's got to be embedded into that. And the final thing is, not every agency is experiencing this, but a lot of agencies still are relying upon some very old and antiquated technology and network access. There's not very much TDM, not very much copper out there, and there's a need to be able to move off of that into more adaptable, agile, and scalable networks.
So can I add on to that a little bit, Phil? Because you're absolutely right. But there's one more piece of the puzzle that I think a lot of federal agencies are suddenly realizing, and that is the reality. And AI says, hey, I need data, right? What is it? And we've all been watching the news, right? We've all seen OpenAI, and we've seen Anthropic, and we've seen Google. And the first thing that happened, right, is they all got sued because they had to get information, right? And they consumed the internet. But when you're talking about an AI within an agency, consuming the internet doesn't do the IRS a lot of good, right? I mean, an IRS agent looking up, what are the tax rules for people that have left-handed monkey wrenches and are taking them off their taxes, right? What's the rules for that? Well, the rules are, right, right? But we're not going to have is the nuance of, hey, what is it that we are looking for consistently in auditing, right? Mostly, I'll tell you, if it's the IRS and it's my name is the first thing they look for in an audit. But beyond my name, what is it that we're looking for this year, right? That's what AI does. And AI needs access to information. And that is all of that connectivity. And you ended yours very brilliantly with, look, there's stuff out there that's old. There's stuff out there that's not connected effectively. In the modern world, we've got to get to a place where these assets are connected quickly into a structure that the agency can connect to, manage, and deliver so that the AI can be smart.
So a lot of things driving, this journey, right? And full disclosure for anybody from the IRS or Treasury that's joining us today, we do have Q&A, so Scott's right here for you. So excited for that. But a lot of different things. And so thanks, Bill and Scott, for talking about, some of those challenges, some of the directives, and some of the opportunities. But Erik, I want to switch gears a little bit and let you talk for a second or two about directives, right? So are there any specific directives or elements of guidance that you see as really exciting with respect to transformation within the federal enterprise?
Yeah, so thanks, Stephen. So for me, something that's very exciting was CISA's publishing of TIC 3.0 guidance for branch office use cases back in April 2023. This definitely created a great opportunity for our federal agencies to modernize and optimize their networks in a way that makes more sense. Now their WAN architectures, their security architectures can morph and align more naturally with their real-world data flows. And this in itself will improve application performance and overall service reliability, application availability. And it's going to enable federal agencies to establish internet connections at their field offices, as opposed to routing everything back through a TIC, which is often very congested, oftentimes on a separate coast from where a branch office might be. They can now route those internet connections directly to a FedRAMP secure gateway local to that branch office. So to me, instantly, those branch office use cases are ways for us to enhance application performance at those branch offices, reduce bandwidth through a TIC, and also reduce spend. Those TICs are extremely expensive. And as our agencies move to SASE architectures where they're leveraging those branch office internet connections, they can instantly cut that TIC bandwidth cost in half. A secure web gateway costs on average about 50% less per megabit than a TIC packet. So that excites me. I think it's something that a lot of our federal agencies can go and take advantage of today because of the guidance that came out in 2023. Then when they have those internet connections into those offices supporting local internet connectivity, they can then layer on top of that SD-WAN. They can have SD-WAN, which is going to leverage their existing MPLS connections, their new ADI or internet connections, and it's going to enhance resiliency right from the start. So hey, if you can't tell, I'm excited. I think our federal agencies should be doing this right now.
All right. So for those of you who don't know Erik, this is him excited. So there you go. But I want to open this up a little bit more broadly. So beyond just directives, let's talk about, technology opportunities that exist. So Chris, do you want to talk about some technology opportunities that excite you as well?
Yeah, I mean, a big one is software-defined wide area networking, right? For which I think if an agency can move in the direction, if not fully deploying an SD-WAN, that greatly positions them to better meet their users' needs today and in the future. So an SD-WAN offers several advantages over a more traditional WAN. Increased resiliency by the use of multiple underlay transport technologies. And I mean both core transport technology and access methods. So you can use a combination of MPLS, dedicated internet, broadband internet, and you can access those technologies via traditional wireline, cellular wireless, or even satellite-based access to any of those methods. It allows you to provide internet connectivity to the edge, as I talked about earlier, pushing away from that centralized, very expensive TIC security stack and pushing it out to the edges and consuming that security stack on more as an ad service basis. Centralized management. So no longer do you need to log into every device in the network to do configuration changes. You can do it centrally in a management portal, set those up, have them go out at certain times a day, certain times of the year, however you want to do it. A corollary to that is zero touch deployment. SD-WAN is much faster to deploy than a traditional network. You can just ship the SD-WAN appliance to the Insight, connect it to its underlay transports, and it automatically goes out to the centralized management plane and pulls its configuration down. So all of these factors together result in an overall reduced cost of managing a network. There are some challenges, of course. Pushing that internet connectivity out to the edge greatly increases your security perimeter. As Phil mentioned, you can't just draw a moat around it anymore because you don't even know where the moat's supposed to go sometimes, right? With where these users are. So there's that challenge. If you want to manage an SD-WAN in-house, you may have some skills deficits that you need to take care of, getting training for your folks on how to manage a software-defined network. And there are some upfront costs, mostly one-time costs associated with new hardware and software to deploy this. But overall, I think it offers a great cost-effective, modern way of doing networking.
Okay, so Erik's excited about SASE, TIC 3.0 guidance. Chris, you're fired up about SD-WAN. Hey, Phil, what opportunities do you see that I suspect we're going to get something related to security here, given your background, but what opportunities do you see relative to modernization that excite you?
Yeah, the thing that excites me the most actually is what I see as the convergence of security and networking into different platforms and different products and different operating systems and in different architectures. So, instead of having a layered, transport, and then you add security on top of that, at the edge of the network, you may have 2, 3, maybe even 4 devices at the edge of the network, each providing a particular function. It adds a lot of cost, operational complexity, expense to that. You've got to have different skill sets. This convergence between security and networking is really driving a lot of those efficiencies, providing tremendous cost savings. And it's super ideally set up to enable TIC 3.0 and to enable SD-WAN and then SASE at the same time. So because you've got this integration between those two technologies, we've talked about convergence in the IT space for a long, long time. And that is, I think happening in many respects in this modernized network. I think one of the challenges there is how do you bring those two technologies together, both technically as well as in a lot of both enterprises and government agencies. There have been different organizations and different divisions and different groups that have each managed those separate technologies for a long, long time. And so to be able to bridge that gap and back to the alignment that Mohamed was talking about, sometimes that's more of a bureaucratic, I hate to use the term, but I'll put, bureaucratic organizational issue than a technical issue. But there's tremendous advantages if you do that. And then the last thing I'll just mention, along with the security side, is we've gotten some really nice frameworks through the Zero Trust network architecture and the Zero Trust framework that NIST and CISA and the DoD have set out that provides the architecture and the guidance and the framework around which this new network security can be built in a dynamic and very adaptable way. And again, to use the analogy, the moat, get away from the moat and start asking for people's identity card when they come into the tower. So
awesome. Thanks, Phil. All right, so we talked about some of the opportunities, some things driving modernization. It's difficult to have a modernization discussion, or at least a meaningful one, unless you talk about the migration of legacy systems, right? And I think that when we think through, especially within the federal environment, the impact, the challenge of legacy systems, in the context of this modernization discussion, boy, it can get tough, right? So Scott, can you talk to us a little bit about how federal agencies might think about legacy systems, legacy platforms, when they're envisioning their their network modernization journey and strategy?
Well, can I use the easy button of throw them away? Uh, un- un- Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. I wish it did. So the reality is, federal agencies have a number of interesting technologies that they've deployed over the years. For those of us who've worked in the federal space for a while, we're all huge fans of the hoot and holler networks that the federal government has. And those were set up many years ago to provide emergency communication infrastructures, and they're still there. And in some cases, they may or may not ever go away simply because many other forms of communication are one EMP strike away from being ineffective, right? If you think about what is the cost of a network, when you're talking about the federal government that has to worry about preservation past an EMP strike, you really have to start thinking about what is it that we can get rid of in terms of that old technology. So that's the first question, right? Should we get rid of it? Just because it's old doesn't mean we have to get rid of it. It works in a different way and it may solve a problem. So let's be, let's be fair, keep the stuff that we need. But there is stuff that is old that we have to get rid of, and we have to take an alternate look at, right? If we think about the growth of 5G and as 6G becomes available, the bandwidth that these devices have and will continue to have is amazing. I was actually walking on the Mall of America the other day, and I don't remember why I was tormenting one of my kids. I was tormenting one of my kids about a movie, and in particular, something that is said in the movie. And rather than arguing with my child, which is fairly pointless at that point, I downloaded the movie and I played it for her. And I went, look, there's the line I just told you. There it is. But I downloaded a 1.1 gig movie on the Mall of America in about 3.5 minutes, right? So 5G changes how the world exists. 6G changes. And we all know that GEO, MEO, and LEO are sitting out there, right? So GEO is geosynchronous Earth orbit, MEO is mid-Earth orbit, and LEO is low Earth orbit. Those are all really cool satellite connectivity functionality, right? I'm going to hold up my device, right? We all have these. If you have the newer ones, they have satellite built in. It's built into the device. So if I need to send someone an SMS message and I cannot because my cellular signal is gone, it reverts and sends it out via a satellite connection. So the world is changing and evolving. The types of communication are evolving. So the first thing is let's figure out what we need to keep. Why do we have to keep it? And then let's start looking at what's new and how can we use what's new to head towards what we'll talk about later, the future agile network.
Okay. So Scott, thrilled to hear you triumphantly prevailed in the Mall of America, but also appreciate the thoughts about legacy platform, legacy systems. Let's flip the script a little bit and talk about technology insertion, right? So, Erik, can you talk to us just for a minute or two about what are some of the common challenges, obstacles, and opportunities about new technology insertion as a federal agency is looking at a modernization journey?
Yeah, so when I think about challenges about introducing new technologies to an environment, I think about layers 1 through 7, but then I also think about layer 8, and that's people. People can be an obstacle. The application owners are very interested in making sure that their applications continue to work just as reliable as they have in the past, and they're resistant to change. So it's important that we bring all these folks that have a stake in the game to some place where they can learn about the new technology. And oftentimes that's a change review board. So I recommend agencies to host change review boards to educate all of their stakeholders about new technologies that they're looking to bring to the network, and get everyone on board with those new technologies. So if we're talking about from a technical perspective now, so shifting gears to technical and not just layer 8. If we're talking about things like TCP-based applications running across an SD-WAN environment with LEOs and wireless internet underlays, I think we have a pretty high level of confidence that those TCP-based protocols will work across that. But when we're talking about legacy TDM-based applications with legacy TDM handoffs and those having to be run across an Ethernet environment with emulation, we have to remind ourselves that those TDM applications are very sensitive to timing and clocking. So we'll need to bring in GPS to emulate, GPS to provide that clocking, and then emulation to emulate the TDM across an Ethernet environment. It gets very complicated, very complex. And I would encourage everyone to work closely with their integrators, work closely with their WAN providers to do proof of concepts. A lot of the folks in this panel are familiar with proof of concept labs, where we can demonstrate exactly how those legacy apps might run across new environment. So I just be very diligent about it, do some testing, and work with folks like the people on this panel to make sure you test out all the rigors there for your new technologies.
And if I can just add one thing to what Erik said, which is 100% true. I think as a system integrator, we get the opportunity to work with providers, whether it's hardware providers, telecom providers, and as well as the agency, to try to get that mission alignment, get that introduction of new technology and adoption at the layer 8 level, as Erik eloquently stated. I think it is a challenge. That is probably one of the biggest challenges we run into, is trying to go ahead and introduce that capabilities to the clients, to the agencies. And one of the ways we worked around that is doing a lot of office hours, and again, proof of concept, but then those proof of concept leads to office hours where we invite the entire agencies in, where they're learning about what the capabilities of this new solution is and how it can work with their capabilities. And then that allows us with the ability to bring that new capability, new technology into the organization through the change control process, and again, do those slow proof of concept and create that adoption within the agency. So 100% right, Erik. I think that layer 8 is one of the areas that we need to invest on as integrators and as technologies companies, and that's trying to transform the network.
So, hey, Chris, I'd like to hear from you here. One of the things that, we're talking about technology insertion now. And when we talk about, mid-journey, if you will, within transformation, how do you think about, resiliency, uptime, ensuring continuous operations and, continuous execution of an agency mission, mid-modernization? So what are some things to think about there from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. And I think one of the most important things you can do is upfront identify what parts of your network or enterprise organization absolutely cannot be down, right? Prioritize the criticality of different locations in your network, number one. Number two, this may not be a popular opinion, but I have seen the most successful modernization efforts happen when you actually operate two parallel networks for a short period of time. It does increase cost, but it allows you to slowly transition away from your older technology to your new one. And then you can, obviously, as you migrate, you can disconnect or decommission the older network. So those are the two things I would highly recommend: is prioritize criticality of different sites in your network, and then seriously think about, maybe not network wide, but at least in the critical sites, you may want to run parallel networks for a period of time during that migration.
Yeah, hey, Stephen, if I could jump in, I think a lot of what Chris, what everybody else has said is fantastic. I like Chris's idea where it's needed and where it's applicable to be able to run, parallel technologies or networks at the same time. And we, another way to potentially look at that is look for a production proof of concept in a non-critical mission component of the network. Run that, make sure that the risks are understood of introducing new technology, and then run that for a period of time, and then gradually figure out how you're going to introduce that to, if possible, into different regions of the network, into different layers of the network or mission components of the network. But I think that gives a lot of confidence up front on the viability and the risk mitigation that's required. I mean, I think a lot of us have been in programs where the risk transition is at least as important as the technical and the price part of a project. So anything that can be done in advance of that, whether it's testing, whether it's extensive lab proof of concepts, whether it's obviously strong technical project management and some kind of field POC for significant changes is probably useful.
I would even add, Bill and Chris, I would add the newer concept, which is that of building a digital twin and truly recreate the network as a fully digital asset. So you can do the initial changes, you can look at the perfect office environments and then see what the impact will be. One of the most hilarious things, and I've done modernization projects for many, many years. One of the most hilarious things I ever ran into was a digital modernization project we were doing with a customer, and I was actually helping them build their collaboration infrastructure. We had built it, deployed it, and the CIO came running into the office where I was sitting, and he said, "Your servers are down." And I went and I looked, right? I walked over to the console, I pinged them. All of my servers were up. But then I thought, well, you know what, just out of curiosity, I'm going to ping out of the area where out of the server room. I couldn't ping out of the server room because the network was down. So you got to be careful, right? So digital twin helps, and that's something to consider as you look at migrations, building a perfect digital. But digital twin requires a commitment by the organization to actually have a functioning digital twin.
Just one last comment on that that would support that. A lot of vendors and a lot of products, they have VM form factors as well as hardware form factors or cloud form factors. So, in the past, you'd have to work with the OEM to get a whole bunch of metal and deploy that in a physical environment. A lot of the proof of concepts, at least to test out the technology, even if you're not testing out the scalability of a particular project, but the functionality and the technology and how it works and how it integrates with, a lot of that can be done with relatively low cost VMs and virtual environments.
Yeah, so I'm detecting a distinct theme here, right, with respect to technology insertion, which is test, don't just trust, right? So I do think it is incredibly interesting how things are evolving, right, with respect to what resources are available to test and demonstrate and prove out versus finding along the way. And from virtualized environments and all the way to digital twin environments that Scott talked about. So a lot of resources and incredibly efficient, I think, resources that are becoming available for federal agency leaders as they embark on a modernization journey. So I want to pivot a little bit towards security. And Phil, you talked a little bit about zero trust earlier. And I don't know if you all, but I'll toss this up between Mo and Phil. If you want to talk a little bit about, how should agencies think about implementing zero trust? So, we talked about frameworks, right? But how should they think about actually getting after it, implementing these zero trust architectures as part of their modernization journey?
So I'll kick it off, Phil, and then you could please jump in, and I'm sure I'm going to leave a lot of stuff off the table. So when we've deployed zero trust inside government agencies, we went through the process of exactly what we talked about, which was proof of concept. Being able to provide a roadmap for the clients that aligns again with that mission requirement, mission objectives, and where the agency is trying to go to, and doing baby steps. So trying to integrate zero trust into the infrastructure, it is the framework that we have to follow within the government, working with our government partners. As Erik mentioned, it is mandates that have been put out by the administration to ensure that agencies are aligned in that direction. But that zero trust architecture needs to also integrate with that agile network that we're building, with that transformative network that we're building. So when we talk about SD-WAN, we're talking about integration with SASE integrators. When we talk about doing network observability, we're talking about making sure that the applications that we're supporting are FedRAMP high, that we're providing our FedRAMP high, and that we're able to meet the government standards and where they're trying to get to. So I think those are the kind of steps that you need to take at an early stage. I'm sure Phil's going to go ahead and add a lot more since that is his bread and butter. So Phil, on to you, sir.
No, that's fantastic, Mohamed. I mean, yeah, we spend a lot of time on security and zero trust, obviously, but I think you covered it, and others have as well. A lot of the topics here. I think a couple of things to bring up. I mean, we all know, I think, in this panel, zero trust has been part of the federal vocabulary for a number of years here, and will be for a long time to come. I think we all realize it is an architecture. It's a framework. It's not a product that you go to, Best Buy and, implement in one go. So there are a lot of components to zero trust. And there are also a lot of some very good models out there, from either CISA or NIST or DoD in terms of what components need to be put in across different pillars to have a zero trust framework. So, a lot of us focus on one pillar of that or another. And I think one of the important things is at the beginning of this journey is to figure out what framework and what model you're going to kind of go down, and then do an inventory of the products and technologies that you have in your network. The good thing is probably a lot of agencies have many of the components already deployed and in their network in one capacity to another. So then it becomes a matter of integrating those into maybe some new products, some new technologies, doing it a little bit differently so that your, whatever legacy assets you have there are being most efficiently used. But it's not, I don't think anybody has to start from scratch to build a zero trust architecture. It is leveraging what's there, figuring out the best way to integrate that into an architecture, and then being able to fill in the gaps. It's not easy, but it's not as big of a lift as you might think, or as expensive as a lot of agencies might think getting started. One of the things I will just mention, the benefit of zero trust and a lot of the technologies that we're talking about is it allows an agency or a network provider to place security at the most efficient parts of the network, or where an agency is going to have the most efficiency. So in some cases, that might be you put a PEP, a policy enforcement point. You put a PEP at the edge of the network. In other cases, it may be back at the core data center. In some cases, it may be at an internet exchange, or it could be at the cloud provider's network as well. But this framework allows an agency the flexibility to put those PEPs where it's most efficiently used, and then to integrate that across the board. So
awesome.
Yeah, if I could just add one more thing to what Phil stated, which is a lot of when we talk about network transformation, a lot of the service providers, if you look 10 years, I'm gonna, Scott and I are old, so if you go back 10, 20 years, you look at the network, when we talk about security, usually security was an afterthought. So today, service providers are thinking about zero trust at the beginning. They're looking at ways to align with the agency's requirement, way to make sure that SASE is put in place, and then try to find efficiencies. What can be replaced by deploying a SASE solution inside the infrastructure? What can we reduce in operational expense, capital expenditures for these agencies? So we're seeing that, service provider, whether it's AT&T, Charter Communications, that we work with, they're coming in with zero trust, thinking about zero trust as we do the integration piece. And there's always close collaboration that's happening right now between all the different vendors, so that it removes the risk of interoperability. So when you look at, Fortinet working with AT&T, you see that integration that's happening, and zero trust is being able to deploy quickly. SASE is being able to get deployed quickly. Mobility is able to happen quickly. And that's the power of network transformation. What do you think about security as a whole?
Thanks, Mo. Yeah, so I think that point that both you and Phil made about when you think about zero trust and getting after it, oftentimes agencies may be in a better perspective than they thought. Right, a lot of the elements of a zero trust framework perhaps are already in place, and so that inventory and understanding what's in place, and to your point, some of the things may be in place they don't understand. Right, they may not have recognized that others have specifically aligned services with zero trust elements. So they could be in a pretty good position from the jump. So I think that's an exciting thing to think about. So let's talk about how we pay for this stuff, right? Transformation, modernization, really exciting. I think for all of us clearly here in the room. One of the challenges is always, what's the ROI? How do you think about, justifying the journey? We of course have in the federal environment things like mandates, but sometimes the mandates are unfunded, right? And so let's think a little bit. Erik, I'll toss this over to you. How do you justify, or how do you think about justifying the return on investment of network modernization effort and journey?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep this one short and simple, I think, Stephen. I've already talked about SASE. We've talked briefly about SD-WAN. And I think both of those modernization projects are instant wins for our agencies. Again, with the branch office internet access, with FedRAMP SASE, instant win. Improved application performance with lower latency, and the bandwidth is 50% cheaper with that architecture than routing it through your custom TICs or even MTIPs. And then once you have those circuits installed for your branch office internet, you then use those circuits to enhance your branch office network connectivity resiliency with SD-WAN. So again, just keeping it simple, but I think those are big wins, and that's definitely something that our agencies should be looking to do.
And I just want to add one thing real quick. And I think when you start to go ahead and do this network modernization across the agencies, I think what you start to realize is that there's duplication. And so there's an opportunity to have efficiency that the government recognizes. And when we've done network transformation with the government agencies, we see that, and the government begins to go ahead and look at deploying a SASE solution. Maybe you're able to get rid of VPN users because you no longer need to have that, which means that you now reduce your VPN license costs, hardware costs, software costs, labor costs, et cetera, et cetera. So those ROIs are plentiful, but I think it is really sitting down and working with the agency. It's agency specific type of returns that you need to think about.
Thanks. So I know we're going to run short on time, so I want to get to one of the, I think, more exciting areas, certainly of the work product we'll produce here in this group. But I want to tee it up for the folks that are joining us online to talk about the future state, right? And when we think about network modernization for federal agencies, I think there's some recognition that it's somewhat never-ending journey, right? And we've pointed out and talked about several of the advantageous technologies that are available. Erik characterized some things as like instant success. Instant success from the technology perspective, instant success from the budgetary perspective. But what's next, right? There's a ton of discussion around AI. I think that there's a good bit of discussion and concern, frankly, around quantum. But Scott, I want to offer you an opportunity to talk just a little bit about how should agencies think about this modernization journey, and what does future agile mean for agencies as they think about what's next, what's just beyond the horizon of AI, perhaps.
Yeah, and I love the way you put it, right? Because I think you put it in a very succinct but very powerful way, which is where you are today is modern today, but it won't be modern tomorrow, right? So when we think about this, there's things coming. There's beyond SD-WAN, there's the concept of IBN, which is often called intent-based networking. And beyond intent-based networking is the concept of a self-organizing network. Now, I like to joke, imagine network security where a hacker hits you and your network hits the hacker back 10 times harder, right? They're never coming back, right? Because hackers aren't stupid. They don't go after things that hit them back because that takes resources and assets away from themselves. Their goal is to get in, get out, get the ransomware deployed, get the money, get whatever they're looking for, get in, get out. So one of the things to look at, right, is this concept of what's coming, what's lying ahead. And that is this AI-driven network where the AI actually controls and manages the network for the organization. My favorite example is always, and I know it's boring, and these guys on the panel have heard it probably 40 times now, but it's a great example because it really works. I'm an agency in the federal government and I want to have an all hands call. In some agencies, that could be 700,000 people. There's a lot of people. An all hands call with more than 100,000 people becomes very network drag. I mean, it just will. But imagine you have a call at 11 o'clock for the entire organization, 11 o'clock Eastern time in the morning. The AI sets the network to be optimized for that call at 10:59 a.m. And whenever the call is over and officially ended, because these calls sometimes go late, the AI sets the network back to the way it normally flows. That's an AI managed network. That's a self-organizing network that is able to respond to how the organization needs to use the assets. If we think back, right, we go back to the modern network of 1992, it was a Tootsie Pop. Hard outer shell, soft GUI center, everything the company had was inside the Tootsie Pop. Everything. 1996 comes along, the internet starts to explode. All of a sudden, that Tootsie Pop begins to move outside, right? Now, all of a sudden, we have that soft, chewy center kind of all over the internet, but we still had that hard outer core. As we evolved and as the networks evolved, that's where future agile gets in, right? You're no longer limited and bound by one specific path. You can begin to move your network, move your infrastructure, move your assets in a way that benefits the organization without being stuck to, you have to do it this way, right? You have 17 routers. You have to continue to have 17 routers for all of eternity. So it allows the organization to respond to the needs of the organization in a much more effective way. It's why agile development took off years ago now. It's why people look at agile models, because agile allows you to respond quickly in a short burst to the changes needed to be effective. So thanks for leading in with that, Stephen. The way you asked the question was perfect.
All right. So thanks so much, Scott. So hopefully, this whets folks' appetite to see what we put together relative to this future agile network. And I guess the punchline is that will be the focus of the white paper that we'll produce and publish in early 2026. And I hope that this conversation was informative, exciting, and has you thinking about how do you consider technology insertion, return on investment, for implementing a future agile network. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes remaining for the session today. So what I want to make sure of is that we do open it up for some questions.
There's a comment from BC Brown regarding the not enough SMEs that's able to do the SD-WAN world, and it is very valid. It's one of the things that we're working on as part of the network transformation is to address those and to come up with a recommendation. So it'll be part of the document, Mr. Brown.
Okay, so not enough SMEs. So I do think that that will change. And I'm optimistic that change quickly. So any other questions that folks have that want to post in the chat? And let me take just a minute here to read some of the chat.
So I think, by the way, Stephen, if we look at the end of his question, he's got an interesting point, or she has an interesting point. I shouldn't be sexist. My apologies. That we as an industry need to do a better job of preparing the next generation of people. Here's one of the things that I would argue. We need to have more network engineers that are more aware of AI. Underneath AI, there is what everybody calls the large language models, or the LLMs, right? And if we think about LLMs and we think about how they fit and what they fit, the LLM is the world's largest completion engine, right? You want to do the New York Times crossword puzzle? Go invoke ChatGPT. Take the puzzle, literally, take a picture of the puzzle, put that into the ChatGPT window, and it'll solve it for you. It'll tell you everything because it knows it can do that auto completion. That's what it does really well. But underneath the LLMs is this concept of agentic futures. And an agent allows the LLM to structurally build and deliver a solution on its own without human intervention. Okay, great. When we think about networks, though, there's a framework. There was a product at CES 3 years ago called Rabbit. And Rabbit was horrible. It was the worst product ever because it was a cell phone that was a box that went in your pocket. It was big, it was bulky. And by the way, it couldn't actually be a cell phone. So it was useless. It was everything a cell phone was, but it was useless. But what Rabbit had underneath it was a concept called a large action model. So we think about the network of the future. What we'll be able to do is build large action models of activities that the network needs to respond to, that the organization needs to have done quickly, that the security team wants to happen. Those large action models can then be managed by the AI system that is watching and monitoring the network, and the agents can engage and drive that change quickly. Now, and everybody hears me say that, and they immediately go, oh my God, you're going to take my job. I still need the human being. I still need that smart person that's watching the network, that understands when AI kicks this off, what needs to be looked at immediately to verify that it was right. But more importantly, that the AI responded and got everything, right? Because the one thing that we all know, if there's an attack on a network, a DDoS attack, denial of service, it isn't 50 packets and then the hackers give up. It's 50 million packets.
Yeah.
And if you miss a few, it's going to take the network down. So this is where the future state, as AI begins to move further and further into network management, it begins to become a more integrated part. Smart people that understand what the AI is capable of doing, understand the large action model, understand how all of that works together in that future agile network, will be able to deliver a solution for the organization that allows them to grow. So I love that last piece of the question. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we are now officially at time. So I want to thank the panelists for participating here. So Phil, Erik, Chris, Scott, Mo, thank you so much for spending time with everybody this morning to talk through modernizing the federal environment and the journey that they should think about. And thank everyone on the bridge for spending some time and listening. And I do hope that this was informative for you. I encourage you to take a look at some of the documentation we produce in early 2026. And last but certainly not least, I would encourage you to volunteer, right? If this is something that you're passionate about, if this is something that's of interest to you, whether you're on the industry side or the federal side, ACT-IAC is an entity that thrives by the volunteers that raise their hand. So I'd encourage you all to volunteer and get engaged and involved. So thank you so very much, everybody. You'll have a great rest of the day, and look for the Future Agile deliverable coming at you in early 2026 via the Networks and Telecommunications COI. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.